Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Domino. On this episode, we talk with UTD scuba coaching and photographer, filmmaker, Jeff Seckendorf. He learned to dive in 1990 in preparation for assisting with a series of underwater filmmaking workshops in the Caribbean. He went on to dive extensively in the warm waters around the Virgin Islands and the very cold waters of upstate New York lakes. In 2008, after a long career in the film industry, Jeff co-founded Unified Team Diving, a global scuba training and certification agency and scuba equipment manufacturer. Jeff has traveled the world as a diver: Egypt, Spain, Italy, France, Mexico, Dubai, the Caribbean, and domestically in all four corners of the United States. He's been in caves in Mexico, Florida, and Europe, all over the place. He's got great stories. Enjoy the interview.
Jeff, it's great to meet you. I am fascinated by so many facets of what people do. The ocean and scuba diving is something, obviously, from Kansas City that I'm not close to or that familiar with. So I'm really looking to delve into your world a little bit more. So thanks again for taking a minute out.
Yeah, happy to do it.
So before we get into your life, I am curious, we all went through quite an ordeal with COVID, the pandemic for the last 3 years. And I'm wondering how you survived that time period and how it's changed the way that you do things now that the world's waking up.
It's interesting. I figured out a way to use COVID as a blessing. Now, to say that's weird because I know there was a lot of damage done to a lot of families and a lot of people didn't survive it well. And I don't want to in any way make light of how difficult a time that was, but I bought out my partner on my company a few months before the world started to lock down. And it gave me like this 6 or 8 month period where nothing was happening. And I had the complete freedom to rebuild UTD scuba diving with no pressure of clients. Now, we were fortunate in that we had enough money and stuff to survive that. But it's weird. It was just, for me and from a business standpoint, it was like, how do you put the world on hold or on pause while you rebuild something that's worldwide? And we just took it as an opportunity.
I think that was the key element to all of this. It's strange from my perspective of doing a lot of interviews and asking people about COVID. There's kind of this buyer's remorse, and I hope we get over it, because I don't think it's bad to think that there was a level of this that was fortunate or good for people. And that's not making any kind of judgment or decision based on the rest of the world, what they went through. But I think for some people, slowing down, recalibrating, doing things that you always wanted to do or approaching things from a different angle is totally plausible and totally should happen. I think America should probably do more of what we went through without there being a pandemic.
I think that would be awesome. I mean, there can be a little bit of survivor's guilt, right? Like we have friends who died and friends of friends who died and so on during this pandemic, and it was horrible. But, I'm just not willing to wallow in that in any way, shape, or form. So we just looked at the world, lived in the moment, did what we could do the best we could, operated as functionally as we could in a time when we had no clients because nobody was diving. And we came out the back of that 100 times stronger than if we had tried to do all this work while we were running at full speed.
So let me ask you this. Let me get a handle on exactly what you do for a living. If I put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, let's say second, third graders at a career day, one of the kids asks you, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
I tell them that I created a company that teaches people how to scuba dive, and then I recreated the company to teach them how to scuba dive in a really cool way.
So when you were in that position as a kid in the third grade, what was your dream growing up? What did you want to be?
Oh, I was down the road by, 8 years old, already as a photographer. I was a child photographer. I had a Kodak Hawkeye Brownie when I was 6 or 7. My dad and I built a darkroom in our house when I was about 10 or 11. And I went through a full career as a photographer up until about 15 years ago, and it moved through a series of different events with me: still photography, television news, commercial cinematographer for TV commercials. I did like 1,000 TV commercials, and then I went on and did movies. And then I wanted to get out, and I was looking for a way out. And my way out just happened to be I founded a scuba diving company with another guy.
So have you always had a fascination with the ocean? And I guess that's my next question. If we go back to childhood, where were you born and raised, and how did this journey into, scuba diving in the ocean get into you?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. It's interesting. I was born in New York City, raised in upstate New York in the Albany area, and lived for many years in Saratoga Springs, just north of Albany. It's the most fabulously beautiful place on the East Coast. And then I came to Los Angeles as a filmmaker in the very early 2000s. And then that's about when I quit and started doing scuba. But for me, this company, I was looking for a way out in education. It just happened to be scuba. And, UTD Scuba Diving, my company, is an education company that happens to do scuba diving. It's not a scuba diving training agency that happens to do education. And there's a huge, huge difference in the consciousness of how we run this company, that we are education first. Now, 15 years ago, when I was looking for something to do, it could have been training brain surgeons or rocket scientists or, car mechanics, or I don't know, I'm looking around my desk, people who make calculators. I don't care. I wanted an education project, and I had been teaching, adults all my life, and I had a very good handle on how people learn, and it just happened to be scuba, which is something I am passionate about, but more passionate about education.
So do you ever miss that other life of being involved with, film and that kind of world?
I have a little tiny hand in it still. I transitioned kind of into documentaries, which is interesting for me because, it used to be I couldn't, get a cup of coffee unless there were like 40 guys and 6 trucks and all that stuff. And now, I went to the other side of the spectrum where I've done some really interesting projects by myself or with 1 or 2 other people. So I do keep a little finger in it, but no. The answer is no. The film industry for me was, I've said this a million times, my full-time job was looking for work and my part-time job was working. So
That's
for me, there was nothing more fun than being on set, and for me, nothing less fun than staring at a phone, hoping it'll ring. And, hope is a terrible way to live. So I wanted something more stable, more fun, less stress on the not working part. And that's how I kind of faced it all. And it's worked out well for me. I love what I'm doing. I love that I had a big career and was able to, functionally retire in my 50s and start something else.
That's what I was thinking. There's almost a level of this that even though it's a job and a business, it almost seems like retirement. I mean, when you start thinking about getting down there with that world and scuba diving, it has to be like not feeling like a regular job.
Oh my God. I just spent a week on the southern coast of Spain teaching an instructor development class. I had my bike there. It was, we had like 10 people around, co-teaching and learning and it's fake work. It's so much fun. It's fake work.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. In your pursuits in life between photography and filming and, scuba diving and teaching and all of that, who's been kind of a hero or a role model for you? That is a really tricky question for me because I'm very much living presently, and I spent so many years on set. I'm the least starstruck guy I know. So, I look at a role model and I think, well, maybe my coach who trains me on a bicycle, right? So here's a guy, in his 50s,
who's making me better, faster, stronger. I'm pursuing an hour record on the bike, and he just won nationals on the road. So, that's a guy who, puts his money where his mouth is, right? He's training me to be a cyclist, and he just won one of the biggest races in the world. So, I look at people who are successful in small ways and big ways, and I say, I want to emulate that. I'm a master's athlete that didn't come through, I wasn't a professional athlete. I'm just a normal mortal with a normal mortal body. And I'm having to do it on hard work and smarts and science and all that other stuff. So, I look at people who have, similar to me, ordinary people doing extraordinary things, right? And I say, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So, I think the other piece of that story is that my wife is a nurse practitioner, and her whole practice is Parkinson's disease. So I have a ton of friends with Parkinson's, but she's been leading international treks for the past 10 years for people with Parkinson's. And so I get to go on these treks. There we go. So I get to go on these treks and document them and watch these people doing things way past what they believe they can do. People with Parkinson's climbing to Everest Base Camp, Machu Picchu. We did a Dolomite trek this year. Next year we're going to Japan. It's amazing. So I look at ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and I think those are my role models.
So you've been starstruck, as you said. You've been around a lot of star power in your life. But if you could meet one person alive on the planet and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm not starstruck. I'm the least starstruck.
I guess I'm sorry. Yeah. That's what I meant to say. I apologize. Yeah, no. I had a great opportunity for a few years to live next door to Leonard Cohen when he was alive. So I would say that no matter what, he was, one of my very, favorite people from a child. He's the most amazing mystic ever, kind of a muse for me. So I would say Leonard Cohen. Great answer. So let's get to that part of you of photography, the art part of you. What was the film or the photograph or the piece of art that you saw growing up that really got into you, that made you want to pursue the creative world?
I started dabbling with darkroom stuff when I was a child, and I probably would have been a good engineer if I could actually do the math. And, rather than that, I, never went to college, barely got out of high school. So, that wasn't going to happen. But, I love the ability to apply sort of engineering stuff to things. So I think that's what's making me a good cyclist, because I love bicycles and aerodynamics and the science of it. But, on photography, I also really got into doing, complex work in a darkroom. And this is, of course, back in the 60s, 70s even. And I love the work of a guy named Jerry Uelsman and a few other photographers that had kind of a metaphysical bent to them. And so, I took the craft of photography and combined it with the art and vision of it. And I did a lot of work on kind of the science of photography and the science of perspective and the science of composition. And I applied that to my visual sense and, my ability to manage large groups of people, which of course led to filmmaking. So it's been it was again, serendipitous that I fell into photography, and then it just was something that it turned out that I was naturally good at. But all aspects of it, right? Photography is a commercial art, I believe. I'm not a guy who goes to a museum to look at photography. I'm a guy who goes to a museum to look at masters' paintings and sculpture and things like that. So for me, photography was always a way to do commercial art. And, I think that manifested really well in, movies and, exotic commercials and cool projects, and now in documentaries.
So what has been kind of a motivating force for you, whether it's the career that you have now or the previous career that you had? What has always been something that has driven you to be you and to be good at what you do?
I like things that are difficult, John. I don't know what got me to get to this point in my life, but, I like doing things that are difficult. I became a pilot, and I learned to fly, and then I got into flying competition aerobatics, upside down, inside out, 200 miles an hour, straight at the ground, all of that. I took flying kind of to its limit. I got into cycling, and I didn't race until I was in my 50s, and I did some triathlons, and now I'm chasing an hour record, which is like the hardest thing you can do in a bike, right? How far can you ride your bike in an hour? It's the simplest and hardest thing I think you can do. And I think, the photography career followed the same thing. On a movie set, there is one cinematographer, and that's the job I chose. So I think in this very sort of perverse way, I've always been motivated to do things that are difficult, to do things that are hard, and I tend to find them easy. I don't know if easy is the right word, but I tend to find these projects that are difficult to do manageable. It doesn't freak me out to say yes to something I have no idea how to do, and then go do the research and figure it out. It's just the fun part of life for me. So, yeah, all along it's been this process of, finding, these sort of elite things to do in a non-elite body and mind. It's been interesting.
So, yeah, it is. It's fascinating. So with that in mind, how do you, at the end of that proverbial day, when you do what you want to do, how do you feel satisfied? How do you quantify the end of that day and say, that day worked for me?
I love metrics. It's another part of this, my odd brain. I love metrics on the bicycle. I love metrics on, the website of UTD Scuba Diving and the other projects I do. And I love having the ability to influence people. So, if I look at, my day, and I had a good day of training on the bike, and I had a good day of, advancing students on the scuba program and in the scuba coaching program, I look at it like that, do the best I can every single day, do the best I can to influence people every single day, and I keep finding new things to do. I started a project not long ago called the Institute of Purpose. I kind of started it because I love the name with another guy, but we're doing online content and doing speaking engagements on purpose, on just living with purpose. Why do you get up in the morning? What do you do? What makes you tick? And what happens when you lose purpose or it changes for some reason? We look at, because, I'm involved in the Parkinson's community here a little bit, we look at what happens when a spouse gets Parkinson's and the other spouse ends up having to take care of that person, and has to quit a job or change their life and, loses that thing that drove them forever, career or, something like that. So, my goal is every day is to do what I can to influence people in a really good way without being an influencer, because seriously, I have no idea what TikTok is.
So, of all of the things that you've done and accomplished up to this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
I set an hour record at the San Diego Velodrome on my bicycle. I'm the course record holder at the World 6-Hour Time Trial Championships on a 6-gear bike. And I think the accomplishments that I'm racking up now deep in my 60s on a bicycle are probably the things I'm the most proud of. At the same time, I'm driving forward this company, UTD Scuba Diving, and last week we finally, got the agency certified to ISO standards, which has been a long time coming. So we keep pushing that forward. So, just every day, get up. What can I do? What's new? What's next? What's the funnest thing that I can do? What's one of the hardest things I can do? And I just do them. I'm just motivated by that. I'm motivated by what can I do every day that maybe is a little difficult, but doesn't matter. Sit down, hunker down, get it done, and how does it affect people in a good way?
For sure. So let's say, you have a dream tonight. You run into the 20-year-old version of yourself. You could give that version of you a piece of advice based on what you've lived through and the wisdom that you've gained in your life, what would you tell your young version?
That's easy. I would just tell them, just say yes. No matter what, just say yes. When something drops in front of you, just say yes. You know, there's a saying that, you know, when one door closes, 15 windows fly open. Just go through a window and find something and say yes. Never say no. If it looks too hard, say yes and figure it out. If it looks too hard, you say yes, you can't figure it out, then say, well, okay, I'll go a different direction. But I think just say yes to everything and then figure it out. And that doesn't mean fake it till you make it. That means figure it out.
So I got a quick story for you. The way that John Lennon fell in love with Yoko Ono, Yoko had an exhibit in a gallery in London, and it was a room, and there was a painting on the ceiling, and you had a ladder that you went up, and there was kind of a monocle that was hanging from a string. And you had to climb up the ladder, put the monocle on, look up, and in the middle of the painting was the word yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, yeah, so it's interesting. Every time I hear that, John Coltrane said something about the word yes, too. I think he said the most destructive word in the English language could be the word no. I think something along those lines. But so let me ask you this. You know, everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, friends, you know, clients, colleagues, but you ultimately live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, I think I'm the guy I just described, you know. Say yes, let the chips fall where they may. Everybody really, except myself on that level. You know, of course, I have clients and employee or employers and all that stuff, but, you know, I answer to me.
Right on. So of all of the work that you've done, whether it's in your current profession of scuba or it was in film or photography, what's been the best fan letter, best success story you've ever gotten?
Oh, I got one the other day, 2 days ago, that, you know, so in UTD Scuba Diving, we have this coaching program where I've taken the coaching model that I've been using for years as an athlete, being coached, and we applied that to scuba. So traditionally, if you take a scuba class, it's 4 days or 3 days or 6 days or whatever it is, you show up, you learn as much as you can, which is almost nothing in 4 days, and you're deemed safe to dive to whatever particular level. We took the coaching model and we applied it to scuba. So we made the instructors coaches, we made the students clients, and we open up this sort of ongoing one-on-one relationship between the client and the coach, training people on scuba diving. And most of it's long distance, a lot of it's done through the web, you know, we look at video from pools and things like that. So I had a guy who's only been in the program for 2 months now, and we're making, you know, what I think is pretty good progress and what he thinks is slow. And he just went down to Cozumel to do a week of diving. First time he's been really in the water with other people since he started this thing. And I got this note from him the other day, 2 days ago, that just basically said, I can't believe the progress I made. I can't believe how much more comfortable I am. I can't believe how my buoyancy, my trim, my propulsion, all this other stuff is gotten so much better in this short period of time. The program's amazing. And it's that's what I live for in UTD scuba diving, is to have people have these amazing aha moments, these times when a curtain's pulled back and you get to actually have a vision of yourself getting better. You know, and that's what coaching does, and that's why we do it, right? Coaching, like on the bicycle, it doesn't just make me faster, it makes me better. Coaching in the scuba diving company doesn't make the students and clients, more, facile so much as it makes them just better. So, yeah, that.
Yeah, I dig it. Jeff, if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, your scuba work, anything related to your world, where can they go?
So I'd say 2 websites. The first one, of course, is utdscubadiving.com, and that will give you all the information on the coaching program, the new stuff we're doing. You can find local instructors and things like that. You know, we're a small scuba training agency. There's probably, 20 in the country, the U.S., and maybe 50 in the world, and we're one of them. And then this other cool project I just started called the Institute of Purpose. So that website is instituteofpurpose.org. and there's really interesting content on, people doing things to either reestablish their own purpose or, explain why they get up in the morning, and we're using it as a way to help people figure out what they want to do when things change. So instituteofpurpose.org is one of my favorite ever projects.
Perfect, Jeff. Man, this has been fascinating. You're quite a guy, man. Thank you for opening up the box to your story, and continued success. Keep doing the hard things. I've said that to myself before. I tend to be the guy that picks the things that are just hard and don't make enough money, and I don't understand why I do that.
Well, I can understand why you could want to do that, because, do what you love, the money follows. It almost always happens, and I just think, just try stuff that's out of the box. Challenge yourself. Keep your brain functioning.
Well, I definitely don't feel like I'm alone in the world. I feel comfortable that there's others out there that share the same philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you, Jeff. Have a great day, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.